My husband laughed at his phone while I was telling him I thought our marriage was dying. I didn't know he was reading messages about me. I didn't know I'd be playing those same messages out loud for everyone he admired exactly 3 weeks later. For most of our marriage, people described Rowan Hale as attentive, thoughtful, glued to me. Somewhere along the way, his attention shifted downward, always toward the glowing screen in his palm. At first, it was subtle, a glance during dinner, a delayed response when I asked a question, a thumb moving faster than his mouth. I told myself it was work. He worked in brand consulting, social media strategy, online reputation management. Of course his phone mattered. That's what he said. That's what I repeated to myself every time I spoke into the space between us and watched him nod without hearing me. The nights grew quieter, not peaceful quiet, the kind where you can feel someone else's presence pulling away from you inch by inch. Rowan would sit on the couch beside me, shoulders angled just slightly away, phone tilted so the screen faced his chest. I started recognizing the expression on his face. Not concentration, not stress, amusement, smirks he didn't realize he was making, soft exhales through his nose like something was funny but not funny enough to share. "Who are you talking to?" I asked once, lightly, like it didn't matter. "No one," he said immediately, too quickly. "Just group stuff." I didn't push. That was my first mistake. The neglect wasn't explosive, it was surgical. He forgot small things. He stopped asking about my day. When I spoke, he'd respond seconds too late, like his brain had to travel back from somewhere else before forming words. When I reached for his hand, he'd squeeze it once, distracted, then his phone would buzz and his fingers would slip away. I tried to fix it. I cooked his favorite meals. I planned a weekend getaway he said he'd been too busy to enjoy. I dressed up on a Tuesday night just to remind him I was still here. He looked up, smiled politely, and said, "You look nice," without lifting his phone. The first crack came on a Thursday night. Rowan was in the shower. His phone buzzed on the counter beside me. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious yet. I glanced because the notification preview was long, and my name was in it. She's doing that thing again, talking in circles. Honestly exhausting. My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. Another message followed before I could even process the first. I swear if she put half as much effort into herself as she does into these feelings, we wouldn't be here. I stared at the screen like it had insulted me out loud. The sender's name wasn't saved, just initials, KM. My first instinct was to put the phone down and pretend I'd seen nothing. My second instinct was stronger. I unlocked it. I knew his passcode. He never bothered to change it. He never thought he needed to. The thread opened to months of messages, hundreds of them, late-night conversations, midday jokes, screenshots, voice notes, and threaded through all of it like a running gag was me. My clothes, my voice, the way I talked, the way I overanalyzed, the way I hovered. "She thinks we're still in love," one message read. "She doesn't even realize she's the reason I need an outlet," another said. I scrolled until my hands were shaking. There were messages where he reenacted conversations we'd had, mocking my words, exaggerating my tone, turning my vulnerability into punchlines. "She cried again tonight," he typed once, did the whole "I miss us" thing. The reply came seconds later. God, that's so embarrassing for her. I sat there on the bathroom floor while the shower ran, my chest tight, my ears ringing. This wasn't flirting. This wasn't a harmless vent. This was systematic humiliation. When Rowan came out, towel around his waist, hair damp, I was sitting exactly where he'd left me. I didn't confront him, not yet. I asked him how his day was. "Long," he said, picking up his phone. "Same old." He smiled at the screen again. That night, I didn't cry. I did something else. I started saving everything. Every message, every voice note, every screenshot where my name appeared like a joke. I backed them up to a private cloud folder he didn't know existed. I recorded dates, times, context. I watched patterns emerge. The cruelty intensified whenever I asked for connection, whenever I expressed doubt, whenever I needed reassurance. I realized something chilling. His neglect wasn't accidental. It was entertainment. Over the next week, I became the version of myself he least suspected. Quiet, agreeable, unbothered. I stopped asking questions. I stopped reaching for him. I let him believe I'd finally calmed down. Inside, I was planning. Rowan loved public admiration. He curated his image obsessively. Online, he was thoughtful, emotionally intelligent, the guy who got relationships. He hosted panels, spoke at networking events, gave talks about communication and empathy. The hypocrisy made my stomach turn. Then the opportunity presented itself, almost too perfectly. Rowan announced he'd been invited to moderate a live discussion at a local branding summit. A room full of peers, clients, influencers, people whose opinions mattered to him. He asked me to come. "You don't have to," he said casually, "but it might look good." I smiled. "I'd love to." For the next 2 weeks, I prepared quietly. I edited nothing. I altered nothing. I didn't add commentary. I let his own words remain exactly as he'd written them. The cruelty didn't need enhancement. The night before the event, Rowan barely slept. He paced, rehearsed, checked his phone compulsively. I lay beside him, eyes open in the dark, feeling strangely calm. He had no idea he was about to meet the version of me he created. The venue was packed, soft lighting, branded backdrops, a raised stage with 2 chairs and a podium. Rowan looked confident, polished, perfectly in control. He introduced himself to people with that practiced smile, handshakes firm, voice warm. I sat in the second row, hands folded in my lap, heart steady. Halfway through the event, during the Q&A, Rowan invited questions about maintaining healthy communication in long-term relationships. I raised my hand. He smiled when he saw me. "Yes," he said, "my wife has a question." I stood. The room turned toward me. "I do," I said, "but I think it might be easier if we let you answer it using your own words." I walked toward the stage, toward the screen behind him, toward the USB drive already plugged in by the event tech who thought it was part of the presentation. Rowan frowned, confused. I clicked play, and his voice filled the room. This is why I can't stand talking to her anymore. The silence that followed was absolute, and this was only the beginning. Rowan's face drained of color so fast it was almost theatrical. His mouth opened, then closed. He turned toward the tech booth instinctively, like someone might save him if he looked hard enough. The screen behind him lit up with timestamps and message bubbles, his name at the top, his words unmistakable. "This is what I deal with every night," his recorded voice continued, casual, amused. "She talks like she's in a therapy session. I just nod until she runs out of steam." A ripple moved through the audience. Not loud, not dramatic. The kind of sound people make when something clicks and they don't like what they've realized. I didn't look at Rowan. I looked at the crowd. People who had nodded along to his advice minutes earlier. People who had laughed at his jokes. People who believed the persona he sold so carefully. Another message appeared. "She thinks we're equals, but honestly, I manage her like a client." Someone in the front row sucked in a sharp breath. Rowan stepped forward, hands raised. "Okay, this is out of context," he said, voice cracking just enough to betray panic. "This is private communication." I finally looked at him. "You're right," I said calmly. "It was private, until you decided to make my humiliation a group activity." I clicked again. A voice note played. His voice, unmistakable, mocking my tone, exaggerating my words. The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Rowan reached for the microphone. I stepped back just out of reach. "You teach empathy," I said. "You monetize emotional intelligence. This is what you actually practice." The screen scrolled. Message after message. Not all of them about me. Some about clients. Some about colleagues. Screenshots of him ridiculing people he'd publicly praised. Private contempt laid bare. "This isn't fair," Rowan snapped. Louder now. "You're ambushing me." I nodded. "Yes, I am." The moderator finally stood, uncertain. "We might need to—" "No," someone else said sharply from the audience. A woman, standing.
Let her finish. That was the moment Rowan lost control of the room. He looked around, searching for allies, for sympathy, for someone to rescue him. He found only distance. Phones were out now, not recording me, recording him, the man who mocked vulnerability while selling it. I clicked one last time. The final message appeared, sent 3 days earlier. She's so desperate for connection, it's almost sad. I stay because it's convenient. I let the screen go dark. I stayed because I believed in the marriage you pretended to value, I said. I stayed while you entertained yourself at my expense. I stayed while you curated an image built on lies. Rowan's voice came out small. You're ruining my career. I tilted my head. No, I'm revealing it. I handed the USB to the stunned moderator and walked back down the aisle. The silence followed me like a wake. No applause, no shouting, just the sound of something collapsing quietly. I didn't look back. By the time I reached the lobby, my phone was already vibrating. Messages flooding in. People who'd been there. People who'd seen clips online. The video had been live-streamed to the event's social channels. Rowan's words were already circulating without my involvement. I stepped outside into the afternoon sun and breathed for what felt like the first time in months. Rowan didn't come home that night. When he finally did, near dawn, his confidence was gone. He stood in the doorway like a stranger, eyes red, shoulders slumped. You humiliated me, he said hoarsely. I looked at him from the kitchen table. You humiliated me for a year, I replied. I just let people hear it. He tried anger next. You had no right. I smiled, thin and tired. You gave me every right. He slept on the couch. I slept peacefully for the first time in months. The fallout was relentless. Clients dropped him quietly at first, then publicly. A speaking engagement canceled, then 2. Then an article appeared questioning his credibility. His own words were quoted. He paced the apartment endlessly, phone in hand, watching his image unravel. The irony wasn't lost on me. You destroyed everything, he said one evening, voice shaking. No, I said, you just didn't think I'd stop absorbing it silently. 3 days later, I asked him to leave. Not angrily, not dramatically, just decisively. I'm done sharing space with someone who enjoyed diminishing me, I said. He laughed bitterly. You think you won? I met his eyes. I think I stopped losing. He packed in silence. Weeks passed. His online presence faded. The invitations stopped. The admiration dried up. Without an audience, he didn't know who he was. People asked me if I felt guilty, if I regretted making it public. The truth was simpler. The moment he mocked my pain for entertainment, he chose the stage. I just handed him the spotlight. I rebuilt slowly, quietly, without needing to prove anything. Sometimes I still think about that first laugh, the one he gave his phone while I was pouring my heart out. It reminds me how close I came to doubting my own reality. It reminds me how close I came to shrinking myself to survive someone else's comfort. I didn't, and that's the part he'll never recover from. Rowan didn't disappear overnight. Men like him rarely do. They linger on the edges, convinced the world made a mistake about them. For weeks after he moved out, I saw his name pop up in places it didn't belong. A defensive post here, a vague apology there. Long paragraphs about misinterpretation, about private conversations taken out of context, about how cancel culture punishes honesty. No one engaged the way they used to. That was the quiet punishment. Not outrage, not backlash, indifference. He tried reaching out to me once, 2 months later, a carefully worded email. No apology, just nostalgia. A reminder of what we built. A suggestion that maybe we could talk privately like adults. I deleted it without responding. The thing about public truth is that it removes the need for private negotiation. I learned later that the firm he'd partnered with quietly dissolved the relationship. No announcement, just absence. His website went offline. His social accounts stopped updating. The persona that once felt larger than life shrank into something small and brittle. Meanwhile, I rebuilt in ways he never anticipated. I didn't announce my healing. I didn't narrate my growth. I didn't post cryptic quotes or victory captions. I reclaimed my voice offline first. I reconnected with friends he'd subtly pushed away. I noticed how many times I'd lowered my volume to keep him comfortable. The absence of that pressure felt like oxygen. People still recognized me from the event sometimes. They lower their voices and say things like, "That took courage," or "I wish I'd done what you did." I always said the same thing. I didn't do it to be brave. I did it because staying quiet was killing me. One afternoon, nearly a year later, I ran into someone who used to work closely with Rowan. She hesitated when she saw me, then sighed. "He really thought you'd never speak up," she said. I nodded. So did I. That's the part no one warns you about. Silence trains people. It teaches them what they can get away with. It convinces them that your dignity is optional. Rowan built his confidence on that lesson. I unlearned it. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd tried to rebrand. New angle, new buzzwords, less emphasis on empathy, more on resilience. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so predictable. It didn't work. The internet has a long memory when the mask slips publicly. His name became a cautionary footnote, a reference. "Remember that guy?" Followed by a shake of the head. I never celebrated his downfall. I didn't need to. My peace didn't come from watching him lose. It came from knowing I stopped allowing myself to be entertainment. Sometimes late at night, when the apartment is quiet in a way that feels safe instead of hollow, I think about how close I came to doubting my own reality.
How easily I could have accepted his neglect as normal. How many women do. And I understand something now that I didn't then. Revenge isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about refusal. Refusing to stay small. Refusing to be mocked in private while someone else profits publicly. Refusing to carry the weight of someone else's contempt. Rowan once said I was exhausting, that loving me required patience he didn't have. The truth is, I was only exhausting to someone who needed me quiet. I don't miss him. I don't miss the glow of his phone lighting up his face while I faded in the background. I don't miss competing with a screen for basic respect. What I miss is the version of myself that believed silence was love. And I don't mourn her. I thank her, because she survived long enough for me to stop pretending. People still ask if I'd do it differently, if I regret making it public, if I'd choose a softer ending if I could. The answer is no, because the moment someone turns your pain into a joke for an audience, they've already chosen how their story ends. I didn't destroy him. I just stopped protecting him.
You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.